Some conditions are so pervasive that we do not realize they even exist. It is said that fish do not know that they live in water. They have no concept of what it is like to not be in water, so they have nothing with which water can be compared. For many of us, the punitive model of justice is like water is to a fish, pervasive and unquestioned. Sylvia Clute, from her article on Unitive Justice and Reentry Culture Change. While the United States has about 5% of the world's population, it holds about 25% of the world's prisoners. The US has a higher incarceration rate because it doles out longer sentences. In Germany and the Netherlands, as well as Sweden and Norway, incarceration is used less frequently and for shorter periods of time. These countries rely on non-custodial sanctions and diversion, with only a small percentage of convicted offenders being sentenced to prison, around 6% in Germany and around 10% in the Netherlands. And while US prison populations continue to grow, prison populations in Europe are declining. Prison systems like the US and UK show a stark contrast in recidivism when compared to European countries. However, it remains difficult to compare countries directly to each other because there are differences in definitions of offenses, crime categories, crime report frequencies, as well as sentencing practices and discretion. Though the costs to house a prisoner in Norway are higher, the recidivism rates in Norway are far lower than in the United States. In fact, Norway has the lowest reoffending rate of all Nordic countries. In many European countries like Sweden, Germany, the Netherlands, and Norway, prison is seen as a last resort. Norway has also banned the death penalty and does not give life sentences. A key focus here is seeing prisoners as individuals with psychological needs that need to be carefully attended to. Most prisons are one big building, most commonly using one of three basic designs: courtyard, telephone pole, or radial design. These designs work well for moving lots of inmates around efficiently, but restrict inmates to the same indoor hallways every single day, creating a higher propensity for tension and conflict. Norway began using a campus-style design after reforming its system as a response to reports from inmates of feeling disconnected from reality. This change reflected the goals of the reformed penal system, in which the primary goals became rehabilitation and reintegration into society. Halden Prison is often referred to as the world's most humane prison and was the first prison built after the Norwegian system reform. Halden Maximum Security Prison opened March 1st of 2010 and is surrounded by a circular wall that is about 1.4 kilometers long and 6 meters high. The facility sits on about 150,000 square meters of land, with administration buildings, offices, workshops, and housing units, as well as buildings for activities covering about 27,000 square meters. Halden Prison costs £138 million, around $192 million to build, and a place at Halden costs about £98,000, or about $137,000 per year. Halden has around 258 inmates, consisting of murderers, rapists, and drug smugglers, and the prison population consists of a mix of pretrial custody inmates and inmates serving sentences. Halden employs about 290 employees, with about 190 working as prison officers, while the rest work as workshop tutors, teachers, and administrative staff. The underlying philosophy is that the look and feel of a prison shouldn't be a punishment in and of itself.
We punish them by taking away their freedom, but we don't take away their life.
It's not for the prison to judge or to punish, because the police catch the guy, goes to the court, and it gets a sentence perhaps, and then it comes to prison with that. We have to interact and be human.
If you treat an inmate like an animal, he'd be an animal.
Okay, listen up and I'll explain it to you. Who's got a mouth? I will light this whole up in here, you understand me? I tried to come in and explain to you what was going on, and you all wanted to be. You want to run your mouth about something? We'll go out here and run it.
If you treat an inmate with respect, he'll respect you back. He is a human being.
Halden is designed with glass to allow natural light in and cork and wood to muffle noise, creating a quieter and calmer environment for inmates. While most prisons have windows that look out at the prison itself, Halden gives prisoners a rich view of the outside environment, allowing inmates to track the passage of time. Every inmate has his own cell, with a toilet and shower room, along with a fridge, a desk, and other personal belongings. Each inmate has a key to their own cell and can wander about until they are locked in at night.
There are cameras and locks, but no weapons.
Halden's design strives for an anti-authoritarian feel, fitting the principle of normality, which dictates that life in prison should look as close to life in the community as possible. Normalization includes a regular work week for inmates who can learn trades and skills to help them find work outside of prison upon their release. Halden's layout separates the housing unit from the visitation and education unit, forcing inmates to commute each day. This commute, consisting of leaving cells at 7:30 and arriving at work by 8:15, provides practice for the daily responsibilities that come with reentry. Halden Prison also reinforces normality by, every 3 months, allowing inmates with children to apply to a Daddy in Prison program, which, if approved, means they can spend a couple of nights with their family in a small house within the prison grounds. Another key principle at Halden is dynamic security, which centers on normal interpersonal relationships between all staff and inmates. In Norway, there are not prison guards, but rather contact officers. Contact officers help inmates fill out applications, address complaints, and make sure that inmates get their quota of phone calls home. Contact officers serve as role models, coaches, and mentors, and are responsible for 2 to 4 inmates each. Officers are expected to interact with inmates and must know everything about the system so they can give advice to the inmates for the future. Each officer must complete a 2-year full-time college education in which they take classes on ethics, communication techniques, psychology, criminology, law, and human rights, in addition to completing self-defense and extraction training.
In order to, work well with reintegration and future planning, etc., there has to be, a foundation there of trust between the staff and the inmates.
I often play cards and stuff with inmates.
Additionally, it is not uncommon for women to work as contact officers, with some facilities having as much as 50% of their staff comprised of women.
Do you feel safe?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Well, we get to know all the prisoners pretty well. We interact a bit. We're with them all the time.
The theory for engagement at Halden is founded upon the goal of providing inmates with opportunities for change. However, it remains up to the individual inmate as to whether he wants to use these opportunities in a meaningful way. The overall goal is to fill the day with meaningful activities, which is good for inmates and employees. Norway utilizes an import model in its prisons. This means that while the prison employs correctional officers and prison staff delivering medical, educational, employment, clerical, or library services are imported from the community. These staff members are hired by and report to the local municipality, but work inside the prison alongside prison staff. The system is designed to allow inmates to gain the tools and build the relationships they will need to thrive post-release. Allowing inmates to, for example, shop for commissary at a real grocery store familiarizes the inmates with the process as well as the community members, and it lessens bias and prejudice against former inmates in the community where the inmates will likely be released. However, there are also many others who have a very different view on the prison system.
Prison needs to be an uncomfortable situation. Inmates are in prison as a punishment.
Here, a former North Dakota corrections officer explains why the Norwegian system will not work for America.
Their country is not that big. They don't have the predatory instincts like the criminals here do. They don't have the gang problems. They don't have the drug problems.
Norway has murderers, they have criminals, drug dealers, but you don't think it can work here?
I don't. I think the way that they were brought up there, their way of thinking is not the way the criminal element here thinks.
We can create walls between us, but that doesn't help anything. We have to communicate, we have to interact.
What about the victims who actually has this feel really injustice that the people who commit this crime can actually live in this luxury?
At the beginning of my sentence, I thought that there can only be negative things in being in prison, that basically life is over. But I think you should give people a chance. That's the most important thing.